Hey there, I'm the _twig and I like analysing game rules. Recently, the YouTube channel Insight Check was given the opportunity to preview 4 of the new subclasses from Arcana Unleashed, a new D&D splat book coming out in September. Of those 4, one of them really stuck out to me, the Warrior of the Mystic Arts Monk. There is so much interesting stuff that you can do with this subclass, it's absolutely crazy. I think it's 100% in contention for being the strongest monk subclass, and as such, it's what we're going to be exploring today. I'm going to do a full 1 through 20 straight class build, and discuss all of the awesome options that you have at your disposal. Now, short disclaimer that I need to get out of the way first, I have not seen any of Arcana Unleashed, and this video is not sponsored or endorsed by Wizard of the Coast. I have spoken to Jeremy from Insight Check, but he did not provide me with the pages that he has access to. On the subject of Jeremy, go watch his videos, he's cool. Anyway, because of all of that, I do not know what any of the new spells or feats do, and as such there may be some strong options that I miss. If you want to know what those are though, why not join my Patreon, where I can guarantee we'll have a good chatter about them when the book comes out. Majel is an absolute chatterbox, she quite literally never shuts up. She actually got banned from the World Talking Championship because no one could hear the starting gun. By the way, SK, Mark Rainbow, Biney, Jelly, Precipice, Dreamscribe and One Skilled were the other competitors in that event. So then, Mystic Monk. We'll go further into their features as we level up, but to run through them incredibly quickly, it's a third caster subclass like the Eldritch Knight and Arcane Trickster, although they use their Wisdom stat for casting and pick from the Sorcerer spell list. At 6th level, they can replace one of their attacks with a Sorcerer cantrip, and can also convert between spell slots and focus points, much like a Sorcerer can with Font of Magic. From 11th level, the target of their Stunning Strike gets disadvantage on saves against their spells, and from 17 they can replace 2 of their Flurry of Blows with a 1st or 2nd level spell. Now, because of that spellcasting, species and feats that allow us to access powerful 1st and 2nd level spells which are not on the Sorcerer list have the potential to be really good. That means that I think there is an absolute standout species which beats all of the rest of the options by a large margin, the Lorwyn Elf. This gives you all of the standard elf stuff, dark vision, perception, insight or survival proficiency, short or long rests and advantage against charmed, but it also gives you a free druid cantrip, most likely guidance, although there could potentially be a shillelagh angle on a monk, as well as command, the best control spell in the game. Here's a video for you all about that one. Now unfortunately, as good as command is, we probably don't have enough spell slots to really spam it as much as you normally want to. The real reason why Lorwyn Elf is so amazingly good here is because of their other spell, Silence. This spell is absolutely outstanding on a monk, because of a 2024 change to Martial Arts and Flurry of Blows. If you ever see an enemy spellcaster, you can cast Silence on them, then use your bonus action to make an unarmed strike and attempt to grapple them, preventing them from escaping. That's a single turn lockdown of some of the most threatening enemies in the entire game. And unlike other monks, you have the ability to do it multiple times per day. I don't want to assume that you have access to the Lorwyn Elf, however. It's from a splat book for a setting that I don't think many people play in, so I'm going to choose something else for this build. Just know that Lorwyn Elf is head and shoulders above any of the other options. So, what are those other options? Gnome and Kalashtar are very good here, because as a monk we will have some wisdom investment but won't have proficiency in the saving throw until level 14. The more generic options like Dwarf, Human and Warforged are great as always. Changeling is actually somewhat notable here, because this monk does benefit from being both medium and small, and the Changeling can switch between the 2 sizes with just an action. A few things that I actually recommend avoiding on this monk are species which have a lot of their power budget wrapped up in a strong bonus action, like the Shifter or the Goblin, or anything that can fly. Monk's bonus actions are so good that you really don't need anything else, and there's something that we're going to start doing from level 4 that makes flight kind of redundant in combat. It's still useful elsewhere though. If you want to make a grappler monk, Goliath is one of the best options available, since they get a bit of extra speed and can become large for a minute, allowing them to grapple huge creatures, and that's what we're going to be doing in this build. We're picking Goliath. Normally, the 2 best Goliath ancestries are Cloud and Hill, but we probably have enough mobility on a monk that Cloud isn't super necessary, and I'm going to show you a much better way to get enemies prone. So Hill is pretty redundant on this build. Instead, I'm going to pick Frost. Proficiency modifier times per day, we can do an extra 1d6 of cold damage and reduce the target speed by 10 feet for 1 round. It's not amazing right now, but we will be using that to great effect later on. That's our species. Let's now talk about our origin feat. I mentioned earlier that finding strong 1st and 2nd level spells has the potential to be really good, and Magic Initiate is the primary way to do that. We'll talk more about what you're really looking for in a spell later on, but the only level 1 option that I think is really worth it is Find Familiar. Normally I'd also talk about Command, Cure Wounds, or possibly even Bless, but as I said earlier, you likely either don't have enough spell slots for them, or could be using those spell slots to do something better. As for the cantrips, the feature that Mystic Monk gets at level 6 really cares about their cantrips being sorcerer cantrips, so anything that you pick up from Magic Initiate will probably have to be utility only. Now there is a feat which could be argued gives you a sorcerer cantrip. I can't believe it, but for a second video in a row, Aberrant Dragon Mark is relevant. This gives you a cantrip and a first level spell from the sorcerer list, as well as a few other things that I'm not going to talk about. Now the rules around this are a bit murky and the sage advice isn't much better, but there's a very fair argument with some historic 2014 rules backing that because you're picking from the sorcerer list, the cantrip you select counts as a sorcerer cantrip, so it will work with your level 6 feature. I don't think that this will typically be worth it, but it's up for consideration. Whilst we're looking at dragon marks, the other ones that really stand out to me are Mark of Scribing, which is another way to access silence, and Mark of Shadow, which gives you access to Pass Without Trace, as well as free preparations for Minor Illusion and Invisibility, which are both great. And on top of that, it also gives you plus 1d4 to stealth, even better. Onto our non-magical origin feat options, none of the rest really give you anything that particularly matters for this subclass. I would probably advise against Tavern Brawler. This subclass is very much grappling focused. They don't really want to be pushing enemies away, and the other benefits that this feat gives you range between weak and completely worthless. Lucky is very good for protecting your concentration, since it will probably be bad until 14th level. Tough is really nice for a bit of extra HP, because we'll often be up in enemies' faces, and Alert is fantastic on any monk, since it lets you swap your really high initiative with the party's wizard to help them get their strong concentration spell off easily. I'm going to be picking Alert, but any of those options are great. For your stats, you probably want something like this: 17 Dex, 16 Wiz, 14 Con, and 10 in something else. I put it in Intelligence. You might want to go highest in Wisdom, but I unfortunately don't think that we'll be casting enough spells for that. If you want to get a stat up to 13 for a multiclass, then you're going to have to compromise. I think that the best option is to drop your Constitution to 12 and take Tough as an origin feat, although this does make your concentration saves even worse. Now I'm going to skip through levels 1 and 2 because they're just generic monk stuff, and go straight to level 3 where we get to pick our first spells. When picking spells on the Mystic Monk, I think that there are 3 categories that you want to be considering. Priority number 1 is defensive spells. This is one of the really big things that differentiates this monk from all of the other ones. They have access to a few really incredible defensive tools, and those massively increase their survivability. If there is a good defensive option available, then you should seriously consider it. Priority number 2 is Monk Boosters. These are spells that increase the effectiveness of all of the monk stuff that you were already doing. The Mystic Monk can monk harder than any other monk. Finally, priority number 3 is Silver Bullet Control. As a third caster, you will get to most of the standout control spells far later than any other caster, and as such they will very much be past their prime. Instead of the standard control spells that you'd see on a wizard, you want to be picking those one-off spells that will deal with specific things or bypass immunities. Finally, we have our secret other category. We'll be filling that with a few utility and mobility spells. A couple of other things to consider are that typically a monk's bonus action is actually as useful, or maybe even more useful, than their action. So spellcasting is actually very cheap from an action economy perspective, but on the other hand, our concentration save is going to be very bad until 14th level. Because of that, we'll mostly be focusing on tactics that are not heavily reliant on concentration. So with defensive spells being our top priority, that means that we're picking up shield first, right? On literally any other class, I'd say yes, but not on monk. I've thought about this a lot, and I've also talked to a few people who did playtests of this monk when it was in Unearthed Arcana, and the conclusion that I've reached is that on a monk, shield isn't worth it. We have access to a great reaction defense in deflect attacks, and whilst shield is better, it's not so much better that we should be spending one of our very few spell preps and slots on it. Furthermore, there's a really powerful way that we can weaponize our reaction on a Mystic Monk, meaning that we quite often won't be able to cast shield in the first place. Instead of shield, our first 2 defensive spells will be Blade Ward and False Life. These are both proactive options rather than reactive, and for now, I'd probably recommend making sure that both of these are up as often as possible. Since our slots are mostly going to be spoken for by False Life, I'm then going to pick up a couple of utility spells in Minor Illusion and Detect Magic, which are just always good options to have. Finally, I'm going to choose a silver bullet control spell in Buzzing Bee. This is a relatively new spell, which gives targets disadvantage on perception, stealth, and concentration, so could be useful if you try to sneak in somewhere or are fighting a spellcaster. But more importantly, it completely prevents the target from going invisible. That includes using the hide action. If you are fighting an enemy that just keeps on hiding or disappearing in some way, this spell completely stops that. Now let's level up to 4, where this subclass gets its first really cool technique. I will give a slight warning that this is probably an Ask Your DM one, but it's literally just because of the name of the feature that we get. It all works absolutely fine raw, and if you consider what the monk is actually doing when they use this feature, it makes perfect sense. We get Slow Fall. Now, Slow Fall is normally just a ribbon feature. It lets us use a reaction to reduce falling damage. I do want to make it clear that this isn't literally falling slowly. This is doing a cool roll to break your fall. It almost never comes up. How often do you actually take full damage? On Mystic Monk, however, Slow Fall is an absolute weapon that we can use every single turn for basically guaranteed damage. This is a combo that I call the Pile Driver. We're going to be taking 2 things at level 4, specifically so that we can use Slow Fall to its maximum potential. First up, Grappler. This is a very standard feat on a monk, and we can do all of the same stuff that you would normally do with it. Dragging enemies around, stopping them from moving, that sort of thing. The other feature that we're going to pick up is our first monk booster spell, Jump. Here's the combo. First, we run up to an enemy, use the attack action to punch and grab with Grappler, and then get them grappled. Second, we cast Jump on ourselves, and high jump 30 feet directly upwards. Both us and our target then fall, and would normally take 3d6 damage and fall prone. Except we can use a reaction to negate all of that damage with Slow Fall, so actually only the guy that we grappled ends up on the floor. This is 3d6 bludgeoning damage and automatic prone on anyone we ever grapple for the cost of 10 feet of movement. Even better, unlike other monks who need to fly and then drop their target, we still have them grappled. So they can't stand up, all of our melee allies have advantage to attack them, and we can do the exact same thing again next turn. Maybe even to 2 targets if we use our other hand to grapple a second guy. The Pile Driver combo is genuinely fantastic. It's something I've actually considered multiclassing for in the past, but to get it entirely on a straight class monk, that's outstanding. Now, Jump is the last first level spell that we're going to get, so let's quickly look at a couple of other options. Sleep is still a very good spell, even if it is a bit late, so you could definitely pick that instead of Buzzing Bee. If you want some range damage, Magic Missile or Chromatic Orb are good. I don't think I'd recommend True Strike here. It doesn't tend to result in much more damage, if any, so defensive and utility cantrips are normally better. I'll also quickly discuss feats. Basically, just pick the feats that you'd normally pick on a monk: Grappler, Weapon Master, Mage Slayer, those sorts of things. You are not good enough at casting for it to be worth investing in any of the caster-focused feats, and that includes Warcaster. Unfortunately, we will have to suck up having awful concentration for a while, but that's why we're mainly focusing on non-concentration spells. Okay, let's move on to level 5, where we get Extra Attack and Stunning Strike. I'm going to make one change here. I'm swapping Minor Illusion for Mind Sliver. We can use this as an action, and then use Martial Arts or Flurry of Blows as a bonus action to possibly give the target minus 1d4 to a Stunning Strike con save. Honestly, it's probably not worth it yet, but it is at level 6, because we get our next Mystic Monk feature, Mystic Fighting Style. This means that we don't have to use our full action on that Mind Sliver, just one attack. So we can still use our other attack for things like Grappler's Punch and Grab, or even make the Stunning Strike attempt without using our bonus action, so that we can use that bonus action on something like a Patient Defense or a Jump spell. I do actually want to talk about Mystic Fighting Style a bit more, so let's dig into what you can do with it. First up, there's the already mentioned stun support combo of Mind Sliver. This is very solid and is definitely what I recommend most, alongside a turn 1 cast of Blade Ward if you have nothing else that you're planning to concentrate on. Next up are damage cantrips. The one that people normally go for is True Strike. Now, assuming that you have +4 dex and +3 whiz, True Strike is about +1 damage per round. It's actually not that great. And in fact, a D10 spell like Chill Touch is actually slightly stronger. Probably still not worth the prep over either Mind Sliver or Blade Ward though. If we go all the way up to Poison Spray, however, that's a D12 spell. And at that point we're looking at a 10% increase to our DPR. That's not too bad. Poison Spray does do the infamously unreliable poison damage, however, so maybe you don't want it. If you picked a small species at character creation, there's the incredibly interesting option of Minor Illusion. This gives you an entirely different playstyle, acting as a skirmisher rather than a grappler. What you can do is swap one of your attacks for a cast of Minor Illusion, creating an illusory box around your space. Because that prevents the enemies from seeing you, you can then just run away without triggering any opportunity attacks. It's effectively a disengage for the cost of one attack instead of your action or bonus action. There's a ton of other creative stuff that you can do with Minor Illusion in combat as well. Finally, there's one more potential tactic that uses a bit of an odd reading of Mystic fighting style. This one is definitely in Ask Your DM territory. The wording of this feature is a bit odd. It says, when you take the attack action, you can replace one unarmed strike. This is notably different from similar features like the Eldritch Knight's War Magic. That says, when you take the attack action, you can replace one of the attacks. It's very subtle, but technically, Mystic fighting style doesn't state that the unarmed strike that you're replacing has to be part of the attack action. You just have to have taken the attack action first. You could read this to say, if you take the attack action, you can replace one unarmed strike that you make at any point during your turn, including as a part of martial arts or flurry of blows. Basically, maybe your Mind Sliver can be a bonus action? Now, what does this do for you? Almost nothing. The only especially relevant things that I can find for this are that you could technically use both of your action attacks to make punch and grab attempts if you missed the first one. Or you could use your second attack for a different replacement effect, like a Dragonborn's Breath weapon, or a net throw. There's nothing especially major that this strange reading enables. Overall, I think that Mystic fighting style is honestly a pretty mediocre feature. It makes Blade Ward and Mind Sliver stun strike combos slightly more efficient, and gives a small damage bump if you're willing to risk Poison Spray, but I actually think that you will spend more turns attacking normally rather than using cantrips, at least until you have enough focus points to use Stunning Strike every turn. On the subject of having enough focus points, we get another feature at level 6, Mystic Focus, and this one is fantastic. Next level. Unfortunately, we don't have quite enough resources to use it effectively at level 6. This lets you convert spell slots to focus points, and focus points to spell slots. Let's level up to 7, and then come back to it when we have a few more spell slots to use with it. Level 7. We get our 4th first level slot and 2 second level slots, as well as a new spell prep. If you remember, first priority is defense. That's why we're immediately grabbing Mirror Image. This is a hugely effective spell, and once again it doesn't require concentration, so we don't have to worry about our crap con saves. Blur is an alternative, but that is concentration, and we can already dodge as either an action or a bonus action, so it's not as effective as Mirror Image. Second priority, however, was Monk Boosters, and there's an incredibly important one at second level. I'm going to be dropping Buzzing Bee here and pick up Enlarge Reduce. With Enlarge Reduce on a Goliath, we can become huge, and that allows us to grapple literally any creature in the game. This is the only pure monk that can grapple the Tarrasque. Also, getting plus 1d4 to all of our attacks isn't nothing. That's basically plus 6 DPR right there, about a 30% increase on what we're currently expecting to do. Now, all of that's very exciting, but let's return to Mystic Focus, our 6th level feature. This lets us either convert a spell slot into a number of focus points equal to the slot level, or when we either rest or use Uncanny Metabolism, we can use any leftover focus points that we previously had to make one spell slot, in line with this table. Now, this feature is incredible. Absolute worst case scenario, from level 7 the Mystic Monk gets 8 extra focus points every single day, and they can split those up as much as they want. I've been talking about how important your monk booster spells are, and this is an incredible monk booster, literally letting you just do all of your monk stuff more. Even better though, if you have a couple of FP left over when the party decides to short rest, you can store that FP as a spell slot battery, and then carry at least a part of it into the rest of your day. Importantly, this is taken out of the focus points that you had before your rest. You can't use the FP that you got back after resting, and whatever you spend isn't removed from your post-rest budget. This feature alone makes you the monkiest monk to ever monk, and you have all of your other spells on top of that as well. There is unfortunately one more thing to talk about. Unlike the Sorcerer's Font of Magic, Wizard of the Coast appears to have missed a really important guardrail that allows us to bring back the dreaded coffee lock. Sort of. Basically, unlike a Sorcerer's sorcery points, focus points come back on a short rest. That means that a Mystic Monk could technically take back-to-back short rests to farm spell slots. Now, the slots that you generate must be expended spell slots. That means that at 7th level, you can't give yourself a 3rd second level slot. Because of that, I don't think that there's actually a good way to abuse this. You can't stock up on 50 slots in downtime or anything like that. And there simply aren't any good long duration spells that you'd want to use these infinite spell slots on. For all of the DMs out there, if you don't want your players doing this, just ask them not to. One last thing actually. If you're on a 1 combat per day table, Uncanny Metabolism represents a free spell slot for you to use on any non-combat spell every single day. Right, 8th level. We get a feat and another spell. I'm going to do the spell first. One of the really interesting effects of Stunning Strike is that stunned targets automatically fail strength and dexterity saving throws. If we Stunning Strike with a bonus action, then we can force a fail on a spell that we cast with our action. There's a few options here, but the only one that I think is especially noteworthy is Web. If we manage to Stunning Strike someone, we can cast Web on top of them and they automatically get stuck inside. You might consider doing something similar with Gust of Wind, but since grappling is also an auto-fail while stunned, I figure that that's probably more effective, and is also free rather than using a 2nd level slot. Now for our feats. On most builds, I'd probably just recommend +2 dex to get up to 20, maybe Mage Slayer. On this specific build, however, I'm going to be going a bit off-piste. If you remember, I picked Frost Goliath as my species, which lets me do a little bit of cold damage when I hit, proficiency times per day. Up until now, that's not been super useful, but I'm going to pick up Coldcaster. Now, whenever we do cold damage as part of an attack, the target gets -1d4 to their next saving throw. With this, we can now take the attack action, use Mystic Fighting Style to use Mindsliver, and then declare an unarmed strike with Frost's Chill, Coldcaster, Stunning Strike, and Punch and Grab, all in that order. Assuming everything goes well, the target now gets -2d4 to their Stunning Strike save, and if they fail that, then they automatically fail their Grapple save. Even better, this doesn't use our bonus action, so we can flurry for 2 more attacks, or just cast Jump to do a piledriver combo. There's a couple of other things that we can do too. Coldcaster also gives us access to Ray of Frost, although as it's not classed as a sorcerer spell, we probably can't use it with Mystic Fighting Style. We could actually do a quick shuffle of our cantrips to learn Ray of Frost as a sorcerer cantrip and then learn Blade Ward or something from Coldcaster instead. That would mean that we can replace an attack with Ray of Frost if we really wanted to. Anyway, we can use this as an almost strict upgrade to Mindsliver when we're not planning to either be in melee or use the -2d4 combo, since Ray of Frost does more damage, gives -10 foot speed, and gives -1d4 to a save because of Coldcaster. It's pretty nice for setting up the allied wizard. Furthermore, a really niche thing that we could do is trigger Frost's Chill from Goliath on a Ray of Frost to give the target -20 foot speed. Okay, we'll skip through 9 because nothing particularly interesting happens, and go to 10, where we get Heightened Focus, as well as another spell and a cantrip. In all honesty, there aren't a ton of great spell options right now, so I'm just going to pick up the generically good options of Suggestion and Minor Illusion. At 11 though, we get Focus Strike. This is very interesting. Pass or fail, the target of our Stunning Strike has disadvantage on saves against our spells. This has the potential to be fantastic. Except our only save spells right now are Web, which stun targets auto-fail against anyway, and Suggestion, which many creatures are immune to. What we want is an extremely powerful 2nd level control spell that nothing is immune to. Since Focus Strike only lasts until the start of the next turn, it would ideally have no end of turn saves either. Rather surprisingly, that spell exists, and because Monk cares more about their bonus action than their action, only they can use it effectively. Joining us in the Silver Bullet control column is Levitate. Now, Levitate is normally just used outside of combat to get somewhere high before the casters unlock Fly at 5th level, but it actually has a second effect. You can cast it on an enemy to put them 20 feet up in the air, locking them to ranged attacks only. That's a good start, and if you're fighting a T-Rex or something that doesn't have any range, might just straight up auto-win the fight. The really sneaky part is that on your next turn, you can use a magic action to move the target to any space within 60 feet of you, and you don't even need to see it. That means that you can put them behind a wall, where everyone has full cover against them, and amazingly, they never get another save. As long as you don't put them next to the wall so they can climb out, and you don't lose your concentration, whoever you cast Levitate on is permanently out of the fight. They can't even use a fly speed to escape. That's quite literally as good as banishment. Let's say that the target has a whopping great +8 con save. If we Stunning Strike as a bonus action, and then use Frost Chill and Coldcaster after the save so that we can apply the -1d4 to Levitate instead of the Stunning Strike, we have a 67% chance to just remove one guy from the fight. 2/3 of the time, it works. If they only have +5 con, that skyrockets up to 82% chance of permanent removal. The only issues are that it takes 2 turns and we need to have some full cover to put them behind. Also, our concentration saves suck, but we've almost fixed that. Levitate is our last 2nd level spell, so let's quickly chat through a few other options that you might consider. I've already mentioned Blur. Death Armor has some interesting implications on a grappler. There's a few utility spells like Invisibility and the Seeing thereof. Level 12, we get another feat. I'm just grabbing +2 dex. If you weren't doing all that Coldcaster stuff and took +2 dex at 8, I'd recommend +2 Whiz. Then at 13, we get our first 3rd level spell. First up, if we're using Mystic Focus to convert all of our spell slots to focus points, we're now up to 22 additional focus points every single day. We are never running out. Assuming we actually want to cast spells though, what are we picking? Unfortunately, there aren't really any good defensive spells. Blink exists, but that will break our grapples, and our reactions are heavily contested between Slow Fall for piledriver combos and deflect attacks, so Counterspell doesn't seem worth it here. There is, however, a Monk booster available. As a Monk, we have, at minimum, 50 feet of speed. This build actually has 55 feet, and will get up to 60 feet next level. We can also dash as both an action and a bonus action. Let's weaponize all of that speed with Cacophonic Shield. This is basically a slightly weaker version of Spirit Guardians at 3d6 damage and 10-foot radius. Since we can run so fast, however, we can probably trigger that damage on every single enemy, every single turn. It also gives us resistance to thunder damage, and enemies have disadvantage on ranged attacks, so there are some defensive implications for it. Going on to level 14, and Disciplined Survivor means that we can finally hold our concentration through a strong breeze. +6 and a reroll for 1 focus point means that we're almost never dropping spells. That's really nice. We also get another spell known here. Level 3 is famous for its big control spells, Hypnotic Pattern and Fear. Unfortunately, at this level, a lot of enemies are immune to Charmed and Frightened, and our party wizard probably had one of them already. They have it covered. We want silver bullet control options for when nothing else will work, and there's a fantastic one at level 3. Slow. Anything with multi-attack now can't use it, and they all have weakened defenses as well. It also doesn't have friendly fire, so it can be used mid-fight if the wizard goes down unexpectedly when everyone is all mixed up. I don't think that we'll be casting slow a lot, but it's a really nice one to have access to. Level 15 we get Perfect Focus, and the only notable thing here is that there's a potential Bag of Rats abuse, where we could trigger initiative immediately before a short rest to regenerate enough FP to make a 2nd level slot with Mystic Focus. Maybe even a 3rd level slot if we also convert a spare 1st level to FP as well. Now level 16 for another feat. I'm grabbing +2 Whiz to get up to 19. If you skipped Coldcaster, you could get up to 20 here, or you could choose something like Inspiring Leader, and wait for our epic boon at level 19 to max out Whiz. I'm also going to get our last 3rd level spell, so let's chat through the options. Fireball is always a fan favourite, and Dispel Magic and Sleet Storm are very effective options for shutting down enemies. I'm actually going to pick Fly though. Because of weird movement shenanigans that you can learn more about in this video, we actually apply our unarmoured movement feature to the speed that we get from Fly, meaning that we can actually fly 85 feet per round without dashing. That will probably come up at some point. Moving on to 17, we get Improved Mystic Fighting Style. We can now swap 2 of our 3 Flurry of Blows attacks to instead cast a 1st or 2nd level spell. Quite frankly, this is a very mediocre feature. We could already swap 2 attacks for a spell by choosing to cast with our action. The only things that this lets us do are still take advantage of stuff like Grappler's Punch and Grab, or use our action to activate magic items and stuff. Actually, there's one other thing. If we use our 1st Flurry of Blows attack to Stunning Strike, we can then use our 2nd and 3rd to cast Levitate, and then use our action to move them behind the wall. Our Levitate combo is now doable on turn 1. Nothing especially interesting happens at level 18, so skipping forward to 19, we get an epic boon and a 4th level spell. As with our other feats, there's nothing especially different about your epic boon selection. None of the casting focus ones are worth it, just go with whatever you would normally pick on a monk. I'm grabbing Boon of Combat Prowess so that we can guarantee those important Stunning Strike Coldcaster hits. Now our 4th level spell. Unfortunately, the 4th level selection is kind of bad. The only strong defensive spell is Greater Invisibility, which is incredibly mediocre when we're this high level. Polymorph is also way past its prime. Banishment would normally be good, but we have Levitate for banishment at home. It's simply not worth the upgrade. Ultimately, I think that the only real options here are Dimension Door for escape utility, Wall of Fire for dragging people into, and Fire Shield could be okay to do a little bit of retaliation damage against anyone who attacks us while we're grappling them. I'm ultimately going to go for Dimension Door at level 19 and Fire Shield at level 20, alongside our Capstone, which brings us up to 24 Dex and 24 Whiz. That Capstone is always fantastic, but on Mystic Arts Monk it's even better. We have a spell save DC of 21 before magic items, and can impose disadvantage and -1d4 on any spell we've ever cast using Stunning Strike and Coldcaster. A Kraken has plus 15 on their con saves, and we still have a 61% chance of getting a Levitate off on them, meaning that they are reduced to just using a single Lightning Strike, which we have evasion against. That Lightning Strike does an expected 7 damage to us. Mystic Monk is absolutely insane. They have more focus points than any other subclass, great damage from things like the Pile Driver combo, and really good tier 3 and 4 single target control thanks to Focus Strike. I absolutely love this subclass, and I'm really excited to see what other people could come up with. As of writing, I've had less than a week to think about the final version, so if you reckon I've missed anything cool, let me know in the comments. If you want to see another monk build, check out this Shadow Monk Thrower. There's some really interesting stuff that I found. Bye!